Good evening. My name is Heather Griffin, and I am the project manager for the Grand Avenue Park Bridge project.
I think we better have you speak up a little bit.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Tonight I've been asked to give an informational briefing on the status of the design. Is that better? Yeah. Okay. I'm going to begin with a little bit of history. Just was asked to do that to tell you how we got to where we are today, and then step into some details about the project, and end with a series of renderings, and then take your questions at the end. So. To start off with is to begin 100 years ago when the North End sewer system was constructed. It was built as a combined sewer system, and just for those that may not know, a combined sewer system is where the stormwater runoff from the streets is collected in the same pipe as the wastewater from the homes and businesses. And we still have that system today in the North End. We have a series of outfalls that act as relief points from those, that combined system during wet weather events. But in recent years, we've had a series of, as you know, of wet weather events that actually resulted in basement flooding. And one of the actions that the city took was to do the sewer and stormwater separation project. And that project is in active construction today in the Northwest neighborhood. Part of that project involved looking at some outfalls that were exposed due to a landslide on the steep slopes. And as the engineers for the sewer M project looked at those outfalls, they determined they needed to be replaced. They shouldn't be relied upon on the long-term basis. And they needed a replacement that was also more accessible to city staff, maintenance staff, to get to those outfalls. Right now, there's BNSF right-of-way right up to those outfalls, and they can't get to them if there's a problem. And so they looked at different alternatives for the replacements of the outfalls, and the best solution for that was a utility bridge, which takes us to the purpose and need for the Grand Avenue Park Bridge project. There's actually 4 different lines that would be placed on this utility bridge. The first one is a stormwater outfall, which would convey the stormwater from the sewer M project down to the waterfront. The second pipeline is a connection to 2 combined sewer outfalls for combined sewer overflow events, and that goes up into the Port of Everett property. The third pipeline is to replace a lift station force main. That lift station is down near the port property, and it experienced a break at the base of the slope during the design of sewer M as well, and the city crews could not get directly to it without a lot of coordination with BNSF. And the 4th line will not be put in at this time, but there'll be provisions for a water line on the same bridge for a future replacement of a water crossing as well. An additional benefit for this bridge is something that's been studied over the years, is a pedestrian connection from Grand Avenue Park down to the waterfront. This is an overview of the utility alignment. The pipelines will be at the bottom of the bridge. The green represents the stormwater outfall, and the red represents the combined sewer outfall connection, which goes up into the waterfront place development that the Port of Everett is actively working on. And so it's not shown, the lift station force main actually shares the same trench with the red outfall, so that's in there as well. This is the current cost estimate based on 60% design at this time, $13.6 million for the entire project. 2.9 of that is for the pedestrian upgrade of the utility bridge to provide that pedestrian connection. And this is the source of funding for that pedestrian connection is a $2 million grant that staff was able to acquire for construction of those upgrades, along with a previous commitment from the general fund of $600,000. And then recently, meetings with the Port of Everett, where there is approval to designate access mitigation funding, $300,000 of that, to this project as well. So that makes up the $2.9 million needed for the pedestrian portion of this project. Currently, the schedule is to reach 100% design in March. We began design this past January. The permitting schedule is less certain. It depends on approvals and decisions by other agencies, which we don't have full control over. One of those agencies is BNSF. We are crossing over their right-of-way. We need their approval for that. We also need approval for the construction sequencing as we launch that bridge and put it into place. The second risk in the permitting timeline is the environmental permits, which certain determinations can take a process from being just a few months to a much, much longer time frame. And we're just currently actively working on reducing that risk. The 60% design was subjected to a constructability review, and that current estimate for construction time frame is 14 months. And we're still working on details, coordination, and other elements of the construction. So that's being looked at right now. This is the overall aerial view of the waterfront and the park and what it would look like to have the bridge in place. It is a bridge that consists of a series of ramps so that we don't have to load that slope with a second elevator shaft. The ramps are integral to the bridge, and there's just a single elevator on the west side on the port property. This project begins over at the historical Grand Avenue Park. And the north end of that park will be impacted. The middle picture there, I think, represents the large tree that you see at the north end. So north of that point will be impacted by construction of the foundation of the bridge, as well as launching and setting that bridge into place. And then after that, the park will be restored. We actually have park staff on our team, and their goal is to, make sure that we integrate the crossing in a way that it doesn't detract from the historical configuration that you see. Tonight, a letter will be entered into the record that says, basically from our local parks director, that the long-term use of the park is minimally impacted. And this is a requirement of our federal funding, so that's why we're doing that tonight. So, this was a preliminary rendering of the entrance onto the bridge from the park side. There will be more of a slope down to this entrance, but the main point of showing this is just to show that there is no elevator shaft at that location. You actually enter the top of the bridge structure at this location. And this is what it looks like when you enter onto the top of the bridge structure. You see the throw barrier fencing right there, which varies in height as you go over the BNSF right-of-way, and that's per their requirements for that. Integrated into the throw barrier system is a series of lights at the top, and that lighting will reflect off the panels and illuminate the path. Also, in terms of safety, we have discussed that the bridge will be open 24 hours a day, and that's to try to deter things that proliferate when you close off an area, to have more activity there. And also to maintain that connection over, through the night to the port property as they develop and have more businesses, people who want to come back over that bridge structure. We've been coordinating with the port, and one of the things they brought up is to have glass elevator doors, and we've looked at that. We are including glass elevator doors to be able to see in there into the elevator before you enter, to see what's going on in there. There's also going to be lighting at both entrances as well as along the utility corridor in the bottom, just as a deterrent as well. And then we do have a police department representative on our team that we're working with for appropriate security measures as well. So, this rendering is of the 60% design of the elevator tower on the Port of Everett property. This has several purposes. One is the elevator shaft, but the second is the utility shaft to actually bring those pipes down to the port grade. The staircase wraps around the tower and meets the elevator doors at the lower level at the same location there. And we've been interfacing with the Port of Everett through this design process, and this tower presents a minimal footprint on their property, and it's surrounded by the parking area that they have. This is the final rendering that I have for you tonight. It's just a side view that better demonstrates the ramps on the right side coming from the park, and then a switchback before the PUD transmission lines. There's actually a set of power lines that is between the BNSF right-of-way and the state highway. And so this switchback turns the pedestrians back toward the slope before that. At the slope, then they're switched back to a ramp that leads over to the elevator on the west side. And with that, I'll take any questions you might have about the project.
Very good. Thank you. Council comments or questions?
So, just have one.
Gibson, yeah.
Looking at the elevator tower, is the material going to be some type of a graffiti-resistant material?
Yeah, there's been a lot of conversation, multiple groups that, since this is a multi-use facility, there's multiple staff that are looking at the maintenance needs of this, and they've all described, how hard it is to keep a structure looking nice. So one of the things we are trying to do is make sure we have that sealant that makes it easy to take off the graffiti, because then they don't get the wow factor of seeing their graffiti up there very long.
Right.
They can easily take that off. So, yeah.
Great, thank you.
And then the color choices, we've been talking about that as well to make it less visible. They tend to like black versus white,
right.
Right. Doesn't show up as well. So.
Thanks. Councilmember Murphy.
Thanks, Mr. President. You mentioned a little bit about the lighting, but one of the concerns
Yes.
I had was just around lighting and ensuring that there's not going to be a lot of glare in the neighborhood up above, as well as obviously at night when cars might be driving underneath this.
Right, yeah, and we've asked for a nighttime rendering. I didn't have it ready for tonight, but one of the things to note is that one of the reasons that the entrance slopes down in the park to the bridge is so that throw barrier, you can't even see the throw barrier from, those homes, if you will. We don't want to impede the views. Mm-hmm. And so the lighting system will be down below the bluff area is our intent. So more in the highway area where you already have a system of lights going up and down the highway. That's where you see it from, driving on the highway. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Other council comments or questions? Councilmember Stonecipher.
Well, it's really nice to see the design, and I can tell you guys have done a really good job of making sure that it doesn't impact the park, so I am glad to see that. There was concern, I think, on some of the neighbors that live sort of just on the other side of the park there, that they were going to be looking at a monolith concrete structure, which we would all be happy for if we could walk down there, but they wouldn't want to have to see that. So it looks like you guys have done a really good job. Thank you. Appreciate it. Looks great.
Thanks very much. And if you could just hopefully plan maybe as you get further into the permitting process and have a better idea of the time frame, would love to hear back from you.
Definitely, yeah.
Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.